Hey, Robert, thanks so much for coming on the program tonight, sir. Great talking to you.
You too.
And I was very pleased to see in the website National Review Online you taking on a Huffington Post op-ed by the president of the Brady campaign, Daniel Gross. It appears like the Huffington Post is basically the only place carrying the Brady campaign's press releases these days. But what was the subject this time around?
Well, basically, he was making the case against concealed carry laws by highlighting a case in Seattle in which one man who had a concealed carry permit went on a murderous rampage, and he basically just took this to mean that concealed carry permits shouldn't exist simply because one person misused them.
Now, you point out, I guess he said, that officials, quote, were not allowed to consider his long history of violence and mental illness. But you point out, unfortunately, there were charges against him, but for whatever reason, they never made it to court?
That's true. It's a difficult sort of situation where you look back, with 20/20 hindsight and see, yeah, there were some signs that there was something wrong with this guy. But the thing is, we have a system with due process, and you have to be convicted of something before people can take away your rights. This guy wasn't convicted of anything, so it wasn't that they couldn't consider it; it's that the charges didn't stick.
Yeah, and as I understand too, I mean, the family had talked about their concerns, but we don't really know what type of mental health they tried to get him into, or whether or not they ever sought to have him committed involuntarily.
Right, and this is something you see a lot with these cases where the anti-gun people are trying to point out that somebody had a severe mental illness or something. Is a lot of times all it is some people close to them said in retrospect they were concerned about it, but that's not the same as having an actual determination that can affect the rights that you have.
Absolutely, and again, I think it goes back to us being able to, talk to people when we have concerns about it. I think this is a mental health issue more than it is a gun control issue. Don't you, Robert?
Right. I mean, I think everybody is sort of on the same page that, if you're dealing with gun rights and you're dealing with concealed carry permits, mental health is an issue. But the question is, how do we make sure that we're finding the people who are mentally ill and making sure that they're safe and that they're not putting others in danger without at the same time making it such a loose standard that we're denying people their rights for no reason at all?
Yeah, and you say your favorite line in this entire piece from Daniel Gross, quote, "What about our rights? Well, in the NRA's world, the rest of us have no right to enjoy our own neighborhoods free from the threat of gun violence because we aren't the guys with the guns."
Right. He's just sort of packaging the assumption that gun control works into this sort of rhetorical slam on the NRA.
Yeah, darn it! If it weren't for the NRA, Robert, Washington D.C. would be a bucolic paradise. Chicago would be like the world's biggest Mayberry. It's the NRA's fault.
Right. I mean, because Chicago and Washington, D.C. always implement the NRA's policy.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Now, you say the closest that Dan Gross comes to actually confronting the trade-offs inherent in gun control is when he claims that, quote, study after study has linked public gun carrying to increased rates of violent crime. Try not to sneeze here. Like robbery and murder. So, not so much, as it turns out, right?
No, I mean, I've been following this research for a long time, and I'm sort of skeptical of all of it. It's very complicated. You have all these economists and whatnot trying to take into account all these different factors and put them into a big equation and see if it spits out whether gun control works. But it's simply not true that this research tends to find that concealed carry increases crime. There are only a couple of studies that show that, and the overwhelming majority of them show either that gun control increases crime, such as John Lott's, more guns, less crime thesis, or that it has no effect whatsoever.
Interesting. Now, you say, look, this isn't some random clown blogging for the Huffington Post. It's the president of a leading gun control group. If these are the best arguments the anti-gun movement can put forth, our Second Amendment rights are safe indeed. It is kind of amazing, Robert. Before the Heller decision, I didn't agree with their argument, but it was at least semi-coherent. Since the Heller decision, since the McDonald decision has come down, it seems like the gun control groups have largely settled on let's just demonize gun owners. Let's demonize right to carry. Let's just try to make it sound as morally evil as we can, and maybe that'll convince people.
That's right. I mean, Heller really put the kibosh on a lot of what they were trying to do. It basically said, you have a right to own a gun. You can't have gun bans. So, I mean, a lot of what these folks were going for has just been taken off the table. So they're kind of frustrated, not only because of Heller, but, also if you look at the polling data, if you look at the trends of more and more states enacting concealed carry. My home state of Wisconsin just finally got it after years of trying.
Right, and that didn't seem to hurt Scott Walker in his recall election.
No, it didn't. So it looks like a lot of things are just moving against them right now, so they're getting sort of frustrated, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. Have a great weekend, and let's do this again soon.
Thank you. You too.
Robert VerBruggen with National Review Online joins us here tonight on Cam & Company.